Start that. And the next presentation that we have will be Marcel Rubis, who is a program manager of urban disaster risk reduction from Catholic Relief. Go ahead, and if you can share your screen, that would be great.
May I request just for you to share my presentation, please, Julie?
Sure. You can get started while we work on sharing it.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Marcel Rubis, Urban Disaster Risk Reduction Program Manager for CRS Philippines. So I am here to present some of our laws and at the same time our projects that promoted urban or provided interventions for the urban settlements. So next slide, please. Urban areas in the Philippines are the center of economic activities, providing quick means of earning money for daily sustenance to poor families. This is one of the reasons people from the rural areas migrate to the city, which contributes to the high population and rapid sprawling of informal settlements, which are more often than not located in open, hazard-prone areas and identify no-build zones. Next slide, please. Provide solution to the number of families exposed to various hazards and minimizing risks. The government of the Philippines integrated the Climate and Disaster Risk Assessments, or CIDRA, into the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, or CLUP, of local government units, or LGUs. This provided land use planning with consideration of experienced and forecasted disasters. Next slide, please. Despite the provision of these guidelines, there are still systemic barriers in the implementation of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, or CLUP. First, there is still rapid migration of families that reside in informal settlements and areas that were declared as danger areas or no-build zones. Again, this is due to lack of opportunities in rural areas or provinces. Second is the difficulty of implementing the guidelines. The Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment, or CIDRA, is very scientific, technical, and data-driven, and local capacities cannot cope in accomplishing it, which in turn delay the development of risk-informed comprehensive land use plans. Third, in urban areas, land available for low-cost housing is very limited. Thus, families are relocated in rural areas. This may be the ideal solution, but there is a gap with the provision of basic infrastructure, such as water lines, concrete roads, and far from schools, healthcare facilities, and sources of livelihood in relocation sites. Because of these gaps, families still go back to the urban areas and build informal settlements in another area or LGU. Next slide, please. Other initiatives of the government that could assist in decreasing the number of households in danger areas are the following. Oplan Likas, Lumikas para iwas sa kalamidad at sakit, or in English, Operation Plan Evacuate, evacuate to avoid disaster and sickness. The Oplan Likas relocates households that are exposed to flooding, particularly after Typhoon Ketsana inundated 80% of Metro Manila in 2009. The Pambansang Pabahay para sa Filipino Housing, or in English, National Housing for Filipinos, or 4PH program, is the government's new flagship program to address the country's significant housing backlog. The program is seen to provide low-income households, especially to the informal settler families, or ISFs, in urban areas, affordable housing units. Next slide, please. Another program is the Balik Probinsya, Bagong Pag-asa program, or in English, Return to Province New Life program, which was initiated to decongest Metro Manila's highly populated areas. It also provides assistance in transportation, employment, skills training, settlement or housing, education, and healthcare programs to poor families, particularly to the ones who will be affected by relocation projects. Next slide, please. So for CRS, here are our sum of projects that contributed to raising awareness on the importance of having a safe and dignified urban shelters and communities. First is the Supporting Households and LGU Awareness and Knowledge for Earthquake Preparedness or SHAKE project, funded by the United States Agency for International Development, Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, or USAID. This contributed to improving vulnerable communities' preparedness for earthquake events. This is through provision of trainings on structural strengthening and building standards. The project also increased access of these communities to financial resources for use in house improvement, livelihoods, and in times of crisis. SHAKE project also helped communities in organizing DRR ambassadors or volunteers for information dissemination about the impacts of earthquake and how to prepare for such an event. One of them, Miss Lucia Camuen Valerde, said that after one of the project's learning event, which is entitled How Safe is My House, she immediately checked if their house is structurally sound and rearranged fixtures and furniture that may hamper their safe exit during a strong earthquake event. Next slide, please. Another project, the Preparing for Enhanced Protection in Disasters project, or PREP-T, focused on incorporating safe and dignified programming considerations in risk assessment, preparedness plans, and response mechanisms in the DRRM programs of our partner communities. This ensured that urban settings with high population density will conduct its DRR program through rights-based approach that is equitable and dignified. One of the safeguarding agents, Victor Talain, said that he is very happy to have been part of assisting communities in identifying their appropriate needs based, of course, on their capacities and vulnerabilities, especially with the elderly, persons with disabilities, and children. The Clean Manila Blue Bay Project, on the other hand, or CMBB project, funded by USAID's Clean Cities and Blue Ocean program, contributed to the improvement of solid waste management policies and plans and their implementation in selected barangays. The project bolstered private sector partnerships and increased skills and knowledge of informal waste collectors for the socio-economic improvements. Mary Ann Cerida, a resident of Barangay 118 in Tondo, City of Manila, is a livelihood beneficiary of CMBB project and has worked as a waste collector of their barangay. She has seen the importance of proper waste management and the high contribution of informal waste collectors to maintaining a clean environment while mitigating potential disasters. Initiatives in solid waste, like Collection for Diversion, gave her the opportunity to generate additional income for her family and influence their behavior on proper waste management. Even her grandchild joyously invites her to collect more waste from other households. Next slide, please. Another newly funded project by USAID BHA, the Transforming Households and Local Organization Capacities for a Resilient and Vibrant Urban Ecosystem, or THRIVE project, shall contribute to strengthening national, regional, local government agencies, and private sectors' coordination and implementation mechanisms to manage multi-hazard events and, of course, build safe and dignified urban communities. Partner communities, especially the vulnerable households, including persons with disabilities, will also be assisted in increasing access to financial resources and services. A Thrive project just started on June 4, 2024, and its goal is to incorporate safe and dignified programming in DRRM in various levels of government and sectors of community partners within the National Capital Region. So next slide, please. So again, thank you. This is Marcel Rubiz, Program Manager for Urban DRR of CRS Philippines. Thank you very much.
That was great. I actually already see that there is one question in the chat. So how are the best practices to community. Can you respond to that here?
Yeah, from community to community as much as possible. We also train the local government units in doing the trainings in the assistance that we provide to the communities. So it's more, we pass this on to our partner dioceses as well because we implement projects with our local partner dioceses. So we leave these opportunities to them or the projects that the projects initiated, and hopefully they can continue it. If the government takes on the responsibility of providing the trainings and assistance that were initiated by CRS, then they will put that in their policies and hopefully they can replicate it to other barangays as well. If the project or if we have extra funding or additional funding or another phase of the project, we also implement that to other barangays as well.
We cannot hear you, Julie.
I'm not sure why.
Now we can. Perfect.
Okay. I think we have time for one additional question. If there are any others for Marcel, you can just use the raise hand function. Okay, great. Well, if you think of any other questions, please go ahead and drop those in the chat for Marcel to respond to it there in the chat. So thank you. Thank you, Marcel. That was great. We will move to the next presentation. We have two speakers. Samar Farhat is Urban Recovery and Advocacy Advisor for Habitat for Humanity, and Maya Abu Dib is a Program Manager for Conflict Relief Services. So, Samar, whenever you're ready, go ahead and share.
Thank you, Julie. Can you please share your screen, the presentation? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead and get started while I work on sharing.
So this is Maya, Program Manager working for Catholic Relief Services. And presenting with me today is my colleague Samar Farhat, who's Urban Recovery and Advocacy Advisor from Habitat for Humanity. And we will be presenting our shelter and urban interventions in Lebanon. So Lebanon has been facing multiple crises over the years. Lebanon's context is marked by weak governance, rapid urbanization, and pressure on limited resources. More recently, in 2019 and 2020, Lebanon faced an economic crisis and the Beirut blast, which had great impact on the country. It is now estimated that more than half the country's population is below the poverty line, making it difficult to access basic services. These crises impacted the shelter conditions as people now live in substandard living conditions and are unable to repair their homes. Municipal institutions burdened by financial constraints struggle to maintain essential infrastructure and services, impacting waste management, water, electricity, among others. This photo is of Bir Hamoud neighborhood in Beirut. It is one of the most vulnerable areas in Beirut and Lebanon. This area sustained many damages due to the Beirut blast. Next slide, please. Consequently, CRS partnered with Habitat for Humanity and other local partners to respond to the Beirut blast in Bir Hamoud area. Shelter was our main starting point. Our partners, with support from CRS and Habitat for Humanity, started addressing emergency shelter needs resulting from the blast through repairing homes and shops that were damaged. We also ensured repairs were up to minimum standards. After finishing addressing emergency shelter needs, we started addressing overall shelter and urban needs resulting from vulnerabilities beyond the blast. We repaired homes up to minimum standards. We also repaired common spaces in buildings and light infrastructure in different neighborhoods in Bir Hamoud. As you can see in the timeline, we run both shelter and urban recovery programs in parallel and in the same locations. CRS and Habitat for Humanity continue to provide both shelter and urban support. Starting January this year, we partnered with a new local partner, and we are responding to shelter and urban needs in a new location, Taida. We also used the PASA approach, which my colleague Samar will discuss further in upcoming slides. Next slide, please. One of the main successes in our response was adopting a holistic approach. As mentioned, the main interventions entailed repairs to homes, buildings, and neighborhood light infrastructure for the same communities. We are also providing awareness through sharing information on house, land, and property rights to our communities. Throughout the interventions, CRS and Habitat for Humanity provide capacity building to our local partners who are implementing. We are also coordinating closely with local authorities, municipalities, local actors, and the shelter sector. For instance, CRS and Habitat collect the area-based approach technical committee. This holistic approach helped us maximize our impact in the communities that we serve. Over to you, Samar, and next, please.
Thank you, Maya. Can you confirm, please, if you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Concerning our urban intervention and identifying our communal project, two approaches were used, both participatory. The first urban intervention at a neighborhood level after the Beirut port explosion were conducted through quick impact project or QIPs, aiming to uplift the safety and security in the neighborhood and the well-being of the community. A series of steps were conducted and used to identify our area of intervention and the components to be included within our intervention, such as the KIIs or key informant interviews with various stakeholders, such as local CBOs, religious leaders, education staff, and others. Also, continuous coordination with the local authorities, focus group discussions with the local community, transit walks, whether at daytime or nighttime, in addition to consultation with our peer partners. So 4 main components were identified within the QIP. Cable management and organization of chaotic and entangled wiring, as it used to create risks of fire and short circuits, especially in winter and during storms. Lighting of streets. During one of our night visits, we noticed women sitting and surrounded by their children playing in a completely obscure street. Rehabilitation of a number of building facades requiring maintenance, and rehabilitation of an open space. The following few slides shows before and after of our intervention. So next, please. The cable management, next. The lighting of street, and next, please. The rehabilitation of building facade, and the fourth component. Next, please. The rehabilitation of an open space. So for this component, an abandoned public lot owned by the municipality of Burj Hamoud was identified within our intervention, and after getting the approval from the municipality and following the focus group discussion held with the local community, the lot was rehabilitated and reused as an open public space. The municipality was supportive in terms of donating the lot and acquiring permits and all and other required documents. And however, due to lack of human resources within the municipality and financial hardship, especially after the economic crisis, the lot was partially opened. Some of the feedback received during the focus group discussion and after the implementation were mainly the need for a safe space for children to heal from the trauma after the port explosion, and the need for a space for women, elderly, and different age groups to just spend their leisure time. Next slide, please. So our second approach was provided through PASA, the participatory approach for safe shelter and settlement awareness, and which is a participatory tool aiming to raise understanding of safer shelter practices within a community. So the main objective of PASA were to develop local capacities to reduce risk related to shelter and neighborhood, to raise awareness of everyday vulnerable to everyday risk, related to the built environment, and to enable communities to identify risks and solutions through community action plan. A first PASA TOF, or training of facilitators in the MENA region, was held online in 2021, and it was co-facilitated by IFRC and Habitat Paraguay, and it targeted around 18 members representing various NGOs, INGOs, UN agencies, and others. Next slide, please. So after the TOF, a pilot rollout was held in Mar'ash, a neighborhood within Burj Hamoud, in 2022, with a group representing the community with a mix of different background, age groups, gender, education level, occupations, and else. Three priorities were identified by the PASA group: the structural conditions of buildings, the entanglement of cables and lighting of street, the solid waste issue being a problem at a national level. Following the positive impact at the street level in previous QIPs, the PASA group focused on streets, lighting, and cable management. And after assessing streets with worst conditions within the neighborhood, lighting of 9 streets and cable management were implemented. The high level of coordination with the municipality in facilitating the rollout was a main success for us. However, we had a challenge with a limited number of participants as it was held during COVID. Next slide, please. So Nabha, another vulnerable neighborhood, also in the eastern suburb of Beirut. It is densely and diversely populated, with years of neglect from the local government towards the built environment, and lack of resources and financial means of the local authorities, resulting in a weak infrastructure with several needs. The PASA group identified the waste issue being a problem at the national level, also the unmaintained water and sewage and storm channels, as these attracted rodents and insects and caused health problems and safety issues. However, due to a previous incident that occurred because of the chaotic cables, leading to a fire and causing the death of one of the residents, the PASA group focused on cable management and developed their action plan accordingly. The intervention considered organizing, replacing, or installing new wiring for electricity, generator cables, satellite phone, and others, while also accounting for provisional future installment of cable. The project was covered 17 streets with a direct support from technicians and electrician experts from the municipality. Close coordination with the local authorities, collaboration with other organizations, participation of the local community, and the trust built. All of these paved the way towards implementing a successful project, and also attracting additional organizations to step in and intervene to implement similar communal projects. Participants from the PASA group showed satisfaction with the important work they intervened in, but also in having their voice heard and with their raised awareness towards the built environment in general. Quoting one female resident, also a member of the PASA group, "I now cross the street more aware and noticing various details, problems, and risks within our neighborhood, and I think about what can be done to improve it." Currently, as Maya mentioned, we are working in a new geographic area in Saida in South Lebanon, implementing shelter and communal project, in addition to another project responding to the emergency related to the war in the South. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Samara and Maya. That was great. I think we have time for one question. If anyone does have a question for Samara and Maya, please use the raise hand function. Okay, great. We will move on to the next presentation. Samar and Maya, if there are any questions that come up in the chat, please feel free to respond to those. And we will move on to our next presenter. So our next speaker is going to be Javier Sidon, a Field Operations Officer for Disaster Risk Reduction at Habitat for Humanity. So Javier, you can go ahead and share your screen if you'd like, or please let me know if you would like me to do so.
Thank you. I will share my screen.
Great.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. I will present a project that was implemented some years ago, from 2015 to 2019. At that time, I was the Caribbean program manager and was living in Jamaica, so I was doing direct supervision of this project. I will come just presenting briefly the program. It was an urban DRR program. It was not a post-disaster, but pre-disaster. And let's say the context, we saw it based on the risk diagram. We will say that the country itself is prone to flooding, storm surges, hurricanes, earthquakes. Portland, the city where this program was implemented, was the second largest city in Jamaica. It's a coastal city, like 180,000 people living there, and some of the areas, the level of the ground was below the sea level. And linked to that, vulnerabilities such as uncontrolled urban expansion, especially in case of Jamaica, the problem of spotting from settlements, as there is a lack of a sound housing policy, national policy, which it also goes linked to informal settlements linked to lack of access to basic services such as water, sanitation, garbage management, etc. And of course, this kind of situation also goes to low socioeconomic levels, education, unemployment, which goes to exclusion, poverty, and violence. As you know, in Jamaica is also a serious issue. The program, it was a 4 years program, but at the beginning it was just 2 years. And the donor, USAID OFDA, now currently BHA, extended the program as some of the components were interesting to pilot. The initial output in a DRR program, of course, is the mapping of community at different levels, infrastructure, streets. The neighborhoods we selected, they were out of maps. There were no streets designed. You cannot find them. Any kind of service, socio-economical service, etc. And for them, we also use, interestingly, technology, which was especially available locally. Not just GIS, but also drones, etc., which the university, one of our partners, was willing to use. Another component, of course, we as at Habitat is housing, so we work on the resilience housing component. Also, we work on basic services. Also, already mentioned about the mapping of existing infrastructure, which was almost zero of existing infrastructure regarding water and sanitation, as it was an informal settlement. We also promoted livelihood related to construction, to housing, such as vocational training on masonry, carpentry, plumbing, etc. All these kind of relationships. So we could provide livelihoods, but linked with the rest of the program. Emergency preparedness training as a DRR program. Of course, we also have the preparedness component, and then based on the first components. And also during the mapping, I forgot to mention that we also used PASA as the same than Lebanon, the same methodology, to questions that came from participants of the PASA methodology. One was the need to improve the planning of the physical planning of the neighborhoods. And also, interestingly, they saw, the participants, for them it was clear that the lack of secure tenure of the land was a bottleneck to increase resilience, as they were not, they were afraid of investing in their houses because of risk of eviction, and also because the municipality, as it was an informal settlement, they couldn't invest in infrastructure in the communities. So with all these extensions, the program reached 4 years. The following pictures are just some pictures of the field. You see at the beginning we were doing the measuring of the streets just with basic tools, but of course we moved to more technology. I have pictures of the drones, but there seem to be something new for the communities, of course. This is, we have here Siris. He was one of the GIS specialists. And from the information provided, for instance, in this case, he was explaining to a community member a flooding hazard map of the community based on the information achieved from these surveys. This is we call it a resource center. Every neighborhood, we were working in 3 neighborhoods. So in all of them, we also prepared, provided space for community meetings, to sharing information, etc. In this case, we were renovating an existing building. This picture is about the retrofitting of an existing house. This was an important element of the program. Through low-cost techniques, retrofitting existing houses. And for your information, at this moment, we have a team in the field doing an assessment of the program because of Beryl hurricane that impacted Jamaica and the Caribbean at the end of August, start of September. I cannot remember the exact date. It was August. So we have the team in the field doing a post-evaluation of the program, and the first finding was that the houses withstood the high winds, and the National Center Cluster, which visited the program, has recommended to the cluster members to follow the techniques that we implemented in this program. This picture is about an elevated latrine. As previously commented, there were no sewage system, so it was BIDP latrines, meaning two pits, 2 pits for sanitation, not floodable, flooding resilient. So once one pit was full, you could switch to the other pit, and then when the first one was dry, get it empty and start again. We will also assess if this technology has been working properly in this neighborhood. We will receive the report tomorrow. This picture is about one of our meetings with communities. This program, there was a lot of participation was part of its strategy, and in this case, it was a teacher from the university discussing with communities regarding the redevelopment plan for one of the neighborhoods called Nagohet. Moving forward from the program to challenges, lessons, and the best practices. Challenges in urban settings. The first one was entering into new communities for habitat, with communities that were tired or fed up of promises not accomplished, right? So it took a while to get the confidence, and we also have the support from other civil society local that were already working in the neighborhoods, which helped us to overcome this challenge. Second challenge, of course, we discussed about the challenge of informal settlements, no? All the previously mentioned. So I cannot repeat. Violence. It was a challenge, and unfortunately, also during the program, some of our beneficiaries were killed during the life of the program, and also for the staff, etc., security concerns, etc. Local staffing, interestingly, we were working in an urban area, and we thought that it would be easy to find staff with adequate experience in the fields of shelter, WASH, etc. But it was really a challenge in Jamaica to find this kind of senior staff. So what we did was we worked with students and also recently graduated professionals, which work very well with regional advisors of Habitat. In this case, overcoming, and also as they were young, they were more open-minded and very flexible to implement innovative activities. No? Bureaucracy in urban settings, for instance, for the latrines, it was a new technology for them, so it took a while, several months for the municipality to approve the technology. And of course, land space, no, in urban settlements, in informal settlements, squatting, space for widening the streets, also to find the resource centers, space, etc., or for any kind of or creating open spaces. It was not easy.
Javier, I'm afraid we are running out of time, so
okay, 2 slides. Okay, sorry. Lessons learned. This comes from the evaluation, from the final evaluation, that this approach, the neighborhood approach, could work well in Jamaica, just adjusting for every community, having some adjustments to the context. We also learned that the visible demonstration models, such as the retrofittings of houses, latrines, etc., helped the communities to get engaged with the program as they saw that we were already implementing activities in the community. And we also learned, and this is very important, that land regularization or security land tenure, it's the basis or the foundations toward community resilience. That program tried to learn more about that. Of course, more learning is clear, but we saw that, and we will, of course, this post-evaluation will come back with all this topic that through security of tenure, you can build resilience of communities, no? And this is the same that I'm coming as a promising practice. The land regularization as key towards resilience, no? Some topics that I've discussed about engaging multiple stakeholders from academia, government, civil society, communities, some community participation, technology. That program also had a component not just to regularize the communities, but also try to transform, to change the national policies regarding land tenure. And of course, this could not just be an isolated experience, but try to systematize. I won't share with you this video, but I will share with you the link of the systematization of the fast track process to speed up and reduce the cost of land regularization of plots and whole communities in informal settlements in Jamaica. And this is it. Thank you very much and welcome. The questions are welcome. I will share the link to the video.
Thank you, Javier. We are going to have to move on to the next speaker, but there is a question in the chat if you can just answer that in the chat. And if there are any other questions, please go ahead and ask them in the chat. We are going to move to our final speaker today, Wafa Al-Daily, who is the Executive Director of EHAAR International. Wafa, you are welcome to get started as I work on sharing your presentation.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be talking today about a case study that we had in the few last 14 months or so. That's a project, a pilot project we worked on with our partners, Urba Consulting Humanity Inclusion in France and DEEP in Yemen. And the project was funded by Japan's Quality Infrastructure Investment, QII Partnership, and the World Bank. UNOPS was the supporting project on the ground due to the escalation environment in Yemen. All World Bank offices were closed. So this project was focused on mainstreaming universal accessibility in Senegal and Yemen, but I was involved in Yemen part, so I'm discussing the Yemen work only. And the goal of the project was to raise awareness about universal accessibility and the built environment among urban stakeholders and provide guidance to project owners, urban professionals, and policymakers in Yemen. The project context was within the ongoing World Bank project that's called Yemen Integrated Urban Service Emergency Project, Phase 2. These are 370 sub-projects across Yemen, and we only reviewed 11 projects out of these 370 projects. And the project was between February 2023 and April 24. The picture here, aside from that slide, you can see some of the samples. This is a sample of the sidewalk in Sana'a City, which is unfriendly used by persons with disabilities and persons with different impairments. Next slide, please. The key stages of the study included the introduction and awareness of universal accessibility in built environment in Yemen, which was almost not introduced to many of the people who were working on the project. Yemen has a little bit of background supporting the persons with disabilities and some laws that supports their rights in law and urban environment, but due to the war, that continuing conflict and war in Yemen, most of these roles and laws, standards, frameworks, policies have been put aside until now. And we were trying to introduce the concept as a universal accessibility in international standards and operationalizing universal accessibility in urban projects in Yemen, then finally disseminating the feedback and knowledge about what we have been doing during that time. Next slide, please. So the implementation part included the introduction of awareness, introduction and raising awareness of universal accessibility among the stakeholders. That takes us semi-structural interviews. We have some observations. We did some photo documentation, then seminars, and the outcome of that was the assessment report, awareness raising videos. The second part was how to operationalize the universal accessibility in urban environment and infrastructure in Yemen. We had a technical review of 11 projects from USEP project. There were 11 sub-projects. Then we selected a pilot project, Al Wahda Youth Sport Club in Sana'a. And we had the co-design process meetings and workshops with stakeholders involved in the project. The outcome was a technical guide and report and recommendations, then the practical guide. The last one was the dissemination and feedback, where we shared lessons and learned from the project with wide audience. We have the dissemination workshop with the key and secondary stakeholders. Then we have the internal workshops with the World Bank. Final, we have the 2 publications. They are available online. I'll share the links to these publications in the chat with you, so you can have access to those as well for those who are interested in learning more. Training materials were there, and also we have the video that was published also by the World Bank with the persons with disabilities. So next slide, please. The engagement was based on the semi-structured interviews with the key and secondary stakeholders. We have the online seminars due to the escalated situation in Yemen. We couldn't hold it in person, so mostly was the workshops were online. So we have also focus on this discussion groups. We have photographs and videos, documentation, then site visits for all these 11 projects, and also the Al Wahda project that was selected as a pilot project to implement the universal accessibility elements into the project. We have the technical design review for the project, the sub-projects from USEP phase 2. Next, please. To make the project more inclusive, we included a wide range of beneficiaries. We categorized them to key stakeholders and secondary stakeholders. The key stakeholders were the ones who were directly involved in urban infrastructure, like making policies, laws, standards, and being really involved in the decision-making level. The secondary stakeholders were the ones who are indirectly involved in urban infrastructure, such as planners, professional organizations, academia, international non-governmental organizations, aid agencies, civil society organizations, and advocacy networks. And not to forget the most important part, we included also the persons with disabilities. We have 31 stakeholders involved and 16 persons with disabilities, female and males. So next slide, please. So we relied on our project in some statistics that we got from Humanity Inclusion. Most of the statistics usually it's estimate statistics. And as we know that Yemen has been through that war for almost now a decade, and it's considered one of the most critical humanitarian sites on Earth. So having said that, we try to conclude how many persons with disabilities across the country. It was really hard, but we were relying on some statistics that were provided from the World Health Organizations and other organizations working on the ground and virtually. The estimation is 70% of these persons with disabilities were men, but still the accurate statistics weren't on the ground. We have the product out of that. The assessment report was in Arabic and in English, so we disseminated that for our stakeholders on the ground. That includes the concept of universal accessibility and the built environment, lessons learned from other countries, disability situation in Yemen, the regulatory and legal framework of accessibility in Yemen, barriers and opportunities, and also the took left at the end. So next slide, please. The challenges, outcomes from that, we have the challenges and opportunities. For the challenges, the lived experience of persons with disabilities in the built environment includes inadequate infrastructure, limited access to public transportation, absence of accessible restrooms, and sanitation facilities, then inaccessible public buildings, barriers to leisure education and employment, and then the war-related damage. Then we have the common technical, legal, societal, and financial challenges that includes the technical and practical knowledge, skills, and information related to universal accessibility and how they are implemented in different projects. Then the lack of resources, and the final one was the gender limitations. The opportunities were making the case of mainstreaming universal accessibility in Yemen to prioritize the setting and awareness raising. Then we have the cost benefit analysis, because when we were working on the project, most of the time they were referring to the cost. When we had the cost analysis and all that, we proved them kind of wrong, that this is not a huge cost added to the project. While it's using it at the beginning, it's better than having it or integrated at the end. So the cost was almost no more than between 8 and to 12% of the total cost of the project. Then we have the peace building and inclusion. The opportunity, the second opportunity was the entry point for mainstreaming universal accessibility and urban infrastructure project under the USIP project for the World Bank. We have the capacity building and training and awareness raising and campaigning about the importance of universal accessibility. Then the provision of technical and legal support, promotion, participation in a dialogue to include universal accessibility in different stages of the project, and also in the policy making decisions and all standards and laws for buildings. Then learning from international best practices. The opportunities usually are the key point where you can start and convincing stakeholders, especially the government, of the importance of including the universal accessibility and their law enforcement. So next slide, please. Now we have the pilot project that we selected with the stakeholders. It was a candidate project that we worked on. The objective of the co-design process, we chose to have the co-design process. The project was already designed by the owner of the project, but UNEPS was working on the project. We have the project from the World Bank to try to redesign the project, and the co-design process was really important to identify this pilot project as a rehabilitation project for showcasing the visibility and added value of universal enhancement that can serve as a model that can be repeated or replicated across Yemen and other countries in similar context. Then develop the user-centric design solutions, and we have the enhanced skills of expertise of people who were included in that, including local authorities, implementing agencies, professional of universal accessibilities and inclusive urban planning. Then provide localized technical and methodology guidelines. After we finished the co-design process, we provided also the guideline for that can be used with other authorities in there. So next slide, please.
Wafa, I'm afraid we need to start wrapping up. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem. So I'll just the importance of the co-design, that you have the promotion accessibility, then you have the buy-in from stakeholders, then you have the model for future facilities that can be replicated. So these are the challenges, was the funding and the limited access to the fund itself, and also the project timeline was really very short, so we didn't continue. Was just given to stakeholders. So the guidelines, we have also that product and from the project. I'll share the link to it so you can have access to that. And it's a guideline, national guidelines based on localized context. Go ahead for the next slide, please. That's the guideline and the key takeaways. The next slide. Yes, so we have the quick win solutions. When you have a project like that in an environment like Yemen, when you have a quick win solution, then you can pick up from there. So you have the buy-in from stakeholders. Time is key. We were involved in the project almost at the middle. So it wasn't at the beginning. If it was at the beginning, it was really, it would have really been helpful. But if it was in the middle of the project, so it was hard to continue doing whatever we feel like it should be there, and it can make the project more accessible. But it was really important to have the timing in there. Then we have the interest from the people on the ground to learn more about universal accessibility. The final one was the enhanced cross-section dialogue between other organizations across the country, helping them to understand how they can coordinate the work and also the importance of coordinating the work on the ground. So next slide, please. Thank you so much. And I'll share these links also in the chat. So for everyone who would like to learn more about the two projects and the guidance. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Wafa. So if you do have any questions for Wafa, please go ahead and drop those in the chat. We won't have time to answer them out loud for everyone, but I am now going to pass to Ava to moderate a plenary discussion. So Ava, over to you.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks a lot, colleagues, for your availability to present today. I'm gonna ask, what we're willing to do now, it's a bit of like a plenary discussion, a bit of a debate and interaction between also like presenters, and audience. So feel free also to switch on your camera if your internet connectivity allows. So like the presenters, they've shared with us some interesting questions that they wanted to address in plenary. We have like less than 15 minutes, so we are not able to address all of them. But there were, for example, we had two presenters, We had like Maya and Samar, and also we had Osama, that they were wondering, about the sustainability of urban interventions, like after that. And it would be great if we can share some thoughts about it, And I leave the floor to the presenters first, but also to the audience to reflect together, like during the next 4 minutes, on how to ensure sustainability of urban interventions. Thank you. So feel free to start. I don't know if presenters, Maya, Samar, Osama, Javier, it was also relevant for you, Wafa, or other colleagues to initiate the debate, please.
I can start, Eva. Maya, would you like to start?
Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So yeah, concerning sustainability of any intervention at an urban level, I believe it's a collaboration between different parties involved and engaged and committed to the projects to be implemented. So talking about our context and the constraints we faced with the local authorities due to several reasons, and also, of course, not to forget the various and the multi-layer crises we face. So in this case, I do believe the people are centered in ensuring sustainability of the intervention, because they are the most one concerned with the benefit of this intervention, and they they can ensure, they can commit to protect this intervention and to monitor, to control whatever being implemented within their neighborhood or street or whatever level we're talking about. I don't know, Maya, if you want to add anything. Thank you.
Yes, so I would add only one thing regarding the sustainability, and it's specifically relating to our context, which I think is valid also elsewhere. We face a lot of difficulties with the local municipalities and their inability financially to sustain. So a question to you all on what happens after our intervention. How can we, at some stage, guarantee that the municipality or the local committees or authorities would be able to sustain whatever we did?
Thanks, no, Samar and Maya. I don't know if anybody else, Osama or Javier, want to add on this.
Hi.
Wafa. Yes, Marcel, please.
Yes. It's one thing really to incorporate the policies, incorporate the initiatives within the policies of the government sector, but maybe sometimes leaders do change and policies do change. So it's really important to incorporate social behavior change in with the beneficiaries, because they are the ones who really can do something about their lives, their livelihoods, their houses, and provide them opportunities. Of course, if they are poor families, give them skills, opportunities, or trainings, connect them to the private sector. And again, it's also a collaboration of different sectors as well. So behavior change within the where you work with the communities you work with is very important. There will be no continuity if there is no participation of the community. Even if there are policies, if the politicians will not really implement these policies, nothing will happen. So it's really going down to the communities and work with them and change behavior towards, of course, their sustainability and resilience towards against the disasters that they experience.
Thanks a lot, Marcel. Anybody else, also from the audience, please feel free, unmute yourself.
If I may, I think it's important to have the buy-in from all stakeholders, especially the target audience or target populations. Once you have the buy-in and the ownership, so most of the time they like to continue and sustain the work that have been implemented. During this implementation phase, it's very important to look at the low cost, so you can have low maintenance cost after that. So use the materials that is available locally, use the local experts who are in there, who are available, who can volunteer also their times. And it's important also to engage the private sector, to have the public-private partnership to support the continuity of any effort in there. I think also you can come up during the implementation and before you finish your project to have the cost recovery model. You need to have a cost recovery model in there in hand. So once you leave, somebody else can take over and continue the work in there. So these are like few tips in here and there, but most important is the partnership and the ownership from local communities, so they can continue the work in there. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wafa. So if anybody else, if not, we can also there were several reflections in the presentations and also from the presenters on HLP challenges in work in urban context, also about land tenure regularization process, no, as like Javier mentioned. So I think we can also reflect just briefly on that together. I don't know if any of the presenters or also people in the audience wants to kick off this reflection. And also there's a question from Hilmi in the chat, so also feel free to interact to that one.
I can talk from my side. We had a donor in Jamaica, USAID OFDA, and we felt a lot of flexibility and also all interest on the HLP issue. And that's why the donor was willing to extend the grant. And also some of the components designed previously of implementation that we saw that were not so critical or so relevant, the donor was happy to switch them and use that money for other activities that seem to be more relevant or appreciated by the communities. No? So the only thing in our case, the donor also tried to help us to find a new grant to continue with working with the government. In that case, for instance, he tried to help us getting a new grant from USA directly, and we couldn't succeed. So that was a pity, but the work was done, and at least regarding sustainability, what we did was systematization of the process, producing a lot of manuals, videos to keep all the knowledge available. And we are still here, meaning that now after Beryl, we are trying to provide all this knowledge to the agencies that are now implementing in Jamaica, no, from our side.
Our side for the World Bank project that was also funded from the Japan's QII partnership. There was a little bit of challenge because we have limited fund for the project. This project was a small project with a multi-millions project for the World Bank. So we were entitled to integrate universal accessibility in these projects that were, or they are ongoing projects in Yemen. So we had only that limited fund for that project only to try to integrate the universal accessibilities in there. And the time frame also was limited. So the only things that we could do is having this review and also the co-design process for one pilot project in there. The fund for that project as well wasn't enough to include the universal accessibility solutions outside in the surroundings. It was only in the building itself. So it was the fund constraints in there, and we hand it over to UNOPS and World Bank so they can do the rest, because our agreement or contract with the World Bank has ended in April by finishing the project. So the fund is very important. If it's possible to extend, that will be great. But if not, then they have to deal with it. So something like that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Javier and Wafa, and thanks also a lot for your time today. I'm gonna now pass over my colleague Julie to wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks to our speakers for presenting these case studies on approaches to urban interventions and response. We really appreciate that and are glad to have been able to focus on that in today's webinar. The working group is planning on hosting another webinar either towards the end of this year or early in 2025. So please just keep an eye out on email communications for that. And then there was one thing that Hilmi, the working group co-chair, wanted to flag for everyone today. So Hilmi, go ahead. Oh, Hilmi, we can't hear you. Okay, I can make the request for Hilmi. As many of you know, and for those that don't, the Urban Settlements Working Group also drafted and published the Settlements Approach Guidance Note in 2020. And Interaction is doing some research on the challenges and opportunities to operationalizing the settlements approach, or, as some of you may use the term area-based approach. If anyone here is implementing a settlements or area or neighborhood or community-based approach, please do reach out to Hilmi, and I will drop his email in the chat here because he would like to speak to you on it. So thank you. And thank you again, everyone, for joining today. The recording of this webinar, as well as most of the presentations, will be up on the Global Shelter Cluster website in a few days' time, I would expect. So thank you again all for joining, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.